Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the life of Peter. We're going to talk today about the feeding of the 5,000, and we're going to focus. It's one of the few events from the actual ministry of Jesus that is recorded in all four Gospels. It was such um, a, an amazing event, and it made Jesus took him to another level of fame among the people. And I like all four accounts are good. Matthew's account and Luke's account are just the bare bones account of the fact. In John's account, in John chapter 6, we find out Philip and Andrew's role in this. Philip asked the question, what are we going to do? And that Andrew is the one who finds the little boy. John is the only one who mentions the little boy. And that Andrew found him, who shares his lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish. But I like Mark's account the best. It's the most vivid. Mark, and let me rephrase that. Peter is such a vivid storyteller, and this is the prime example of that. And it gives me the opportunity to mention as we study the life of Peter that every source that tells us Mark is the author of Mark's gospel, and we talked about this when we studied Mark's gospel, tells us that he was basically an amanuensis for Peter, that he was writing down what he heard Peter preach and teach. So so therefore Mark is basically a written record of spoken language, and it reads that way. And not just of anyone's spoken language, but of Peter's spoken language. And we know that Mark was with Peter. Peter talks about Mark in his letters. And so, it all adds up from the information that we have historically and from the New Testament. And so this is Peter's own account of what happened. And we're going to find out from Matthew's gospel next time that there's a direct connection between this event and what we will talk about next, which is Peter walking on the water with Jesus. Okay. We're going to read in Mark chapter 6, and we're going to begin reading with verse 30. Now, Jesus, last time we were together, sent his apostles out on a mission to preach the gospel, sent them out two by two, the 12 of them. And we talked about that. This is what happens when they get back. The apostles gathered to Jesus, verse 30, Mark 6, to report to him all that they had done and taught. So I mean, it's like after camp is done and your kids come home and they want to talk all the way home and then talk all evening until they fall asleep to tell you all the cool things that happened at camp. Only you multiply that exponentially, and they're by 12, and then exponentially by the greatness of their deeds. But they can't. He said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while, for there were many people coming and going, and they didn't even have time to eat." And they went away in the boat to a lonely place by themselves. See, they still have the boat. And people saw them going. Many recognized them and ran there on foot from all the cities and got there ahead. And when they disembarked, they saw a great multitude waiting for them. And Jesus felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, phrase that Matthew uses in Matthew 9. And he began to teach them many things. And when it was already quite late, the disciples came to him and saying, "This place is desolate. It's already late. Send them away so that they may go to the surrounding villages and buy something to eat." But Jesus answered and said to them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and spend 200 denarii? It's almost a year's wage, by the way, on bread and give them something to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go look." And when they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. And he commanded them to recline by groups on the green grass. And they reclined in their companies of hundreds and fifties. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looked upward to heaven and blessed the food and broke it. And the loaves he kept giving to them, to the disciples, and set before them. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up the 12 full baskets of broken pieces and also of the fish. And there were 5,000 men who ate the loaves. We get that important detail at the end of how big the crowd is. 5,000 men. Well, you know there are at least as many or more children and women there. We're talking about 12, 15, 18,000 people who are being fed by these five loaves and these two fish. And that's one of the things Peter as a storyteller, Mark as a recorder, that's one of their devices to keep us riveted to the account, is to give us the key detail at the end, the twist that lets us know something special about the story. And we'll talk about that again when we talk about the raising of Jairus's daughter. Anyway, and we have such a this is a storyteller's. This is an exercise in the art of storytelling. We get the visual detail. The grass was green. They sat down in their rows, not like soldiers, but garden rows, in their groups of 50, in their groups of 100. And Jesus saying, "You give them something to eat." It's so masterfully told by someone who has told the story so many times and who is so great at telling it, and who still is moved by it and who believes it with all his heart. I mean, it's just all of that comes through in the telling of the story in Mark's gospel. And to me, it really is Peter telling it to us because he was there. And we understand what he learned that day about responsibility, about it. The task is not about the smallness of our resources. We have all the resources we need if we go out in faith. But we have to be the ones to do it. God is ministering to the world through us. And that when we do that, even though we're tired, even though we haven't eaten ourselves, even when we just need time to rest and to decompress and to debrief and to just unpack our experience to someone who knows and who cares, even when we can't stop to do any of those things because there's a pressing need, we will be enriched and fed ourselves when we serve others. He found that out that day, and so do we in his telling of this story. They each picked up 12 baskets full. That word for basket isn't the big word for big bushel basket. Like, no one hides their light under a basket. That's not that word. It's the word coffinus, from where we get our word coffin. And the coffinus was fanny pack, literally a fanny pack. It was a basket, maybe a leather pouch or a wicker basket that a Hebrew man would wear around his waist when he was traveling to carry kosher food. And they didn't have any food. They didn't have anything to share. Now they do. Every one of their fanny packs is full of kosher food. Um, and in their serving, they have filled up their baskets. This is an amazing event, an amazing account, and it's made even more so by Peter's um, artistry as a storyteller. Okay, next time we're together, we're going to start talking about those times when Peter, James, and John were together with Jesus, and we'll talk about the raising of Jairus' daughter. We're going to turn back a few pages to Mark chapter 5, although this story is told in all of the synoptics. We're going to look at it from Mark's gospel because this is Peter's own account and because of his greatness as a storyteller. Thank you for joining me for 5 good minutes. We'll pick up there next time.